Pain is the only real teacher a man will ever have, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner your life will start to transform. Most people run from pain like it's a curse, like it's something designed to break them. But a man who truly understands life, he sees pain differently. He sees it as a message, as a mentor, as a mirror that shows him everything he needs to fix. Pain tells the truth in a way that comfort never will. When you're comfortable, everything feels fine, even when your life is falling apart slowly. But when pain hits, when something stings, when life punches you in the chest, that's when you wake up and realize something has to change. Pain exposes the reality you were too scared or too lazy to face. Think about every moment that genuinely shifted your life. It wasn't a moment of ease or relaxation. It wasn't a day when everything was smooth. Your biggest shifts came from frustration, heartbreak, failure, betrayal, loss. Those are the moments when life grabs you by the collar and demands your attention. When you're in pain, you don't get to lie to yourself. You don't get to pretend you're doing enough. You don't get to hide your weakness behind excuses. Pain shines a harsh light on everything you've avoided, and that is why most people never grow. They run away from the very thing designed to build them. They escape the discomfort that could have sculpted them into someone powerful. They numb themselves with entertainment, with distractions, with temporary pleasure, instead of listening to what their pain is trying to teach them. When something hurts, it's not life punishing you. It's life instructing you. That ache in your chest when you look at your life, that is your potential calling you. That heaviness in your stomach when you know you're wasting time, that's your greatness trying to break out. That fear when you think about changing your habits, that is your soul refusing to stay weak. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is the only force that forces you to evolve. You can sit in comfort for 5 years and not grow an inch, but one painful moment can push you further than all those years combined. You don't build colossus by touching soft things. You build colossus through friction, through resistance, through pressure. The same applies to your mind, your discipline, your ambition. Without pressure, they remain fragile. Without pain, they never harden. Without struggle, they never deepen. Every strong man you admire carries a history of pain behind his strength. Champions aren't created in luxury. Warriors aren't shaped in calm moments. Leaders aren't formed in peaceful environments. They are built in fire. Moments where they had no choice but to push, adapt, overcome. Pain forced them to grow muscle where they were weak. Pain forced them to stay alert where they were careless. Pain forced them to create solutions where they had excuses. Pain transformed their mindset from fragile to formidable. You don't become wise because things went your way. You become wise because things didn't. Failure taught you more than success ever could. Disappointment taught you more than happiness ever did. Loss taught you more than victory. That's why a man who understands the role of pain becomes unstoppable. He doesn't ask, why me? He asks, what is this moment trying to teach me? He doesn't crumble when things go wrong. He becomes sharp, alert, aware. He listens to the lesson instead of collapsing under emotion. Pain brings clarity. Pain reveals priorities. Pain strips away illusions and leaves you with raw truth. When you're hurting, you know exactly what matters and what doesn't. Pain has a way of cutting through noise and leaving only what's real. You stop caring about trivial things. You stop wasting time. You stop tolerating weakness. Pain forces you to grow because it refuses to allow you to stay the same. And once you understand that, you stop running from it. You learn to step into the fire because you know it's creating a stronger, wiser, more resilient version of you. When a man wakes up in the morning and feels that heaviness in his chest, that pressure behind his eyes, that ache in his bones that comes from life hitting him again and again, it is easy to think something is wrong. It is easy to believe this pain is a sign of weakness or failure. But the truth, and the truth most men run from, is that the weight you feel on your shoulders is the very material that shapes you. That pressure is the mold. That discomfort is the tool. And without it, you are nothing more than an unfinished sculpture, a block of stone with no definition, no identity, no purpose. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the architect you see. Every man who walks the earth looking strong, disciplined, respected, dangerous, unshakable, every one of them was built by pain. Not the pain they avoided, the pain they endured, the pain they didn't complain about, the pain they let burn through them until they learned how to carry it. because there's a difference between a man who is suffering and a man who is forged. One is breaking, the other is becoming unbreakable. And when you understand this, you stop looking at pain like a punishment and start recognizing it as the test that decides whether you are worthy of becoming the man you keep imagining in your head. Think about the moments in your life that shaped you the most. They weren't the easy ones. They weren't the victories handed to you without effort. They weren't the days when everything worked the way you hoped. The moments that changed you were the nights you couldn't sleep, when your mind wouldn't shut up, when you felt like everyone else had it easier. They were the days you lost something or someone important. The days you were rejected, underestimated, laughed at, betrayed. Those moments felt like they were pulling you apart, but looking back, you know they were forcing something new to grow inside you. But most men never reach that understanding because most men run. They run from inconvenience. They run from confrontation. They run from responsibility. They run from any situation where they might be uncomfortable. And the moment a man runs from pain, pain turns him into a coward. Because pain is not optional. Pain finds every man. The question is not whether you will feel pain. The question is who you will become when pain arrives. That's the real measure of masculinity, not muscles, not money, not followers. Pain, a man who cannot carry pain collapses under the first real storm life brings. A man who understands pain endures it, learns from it, grows because of it, and becomes someone others rely on when the storm hits them. Pain builds leadership. Pain builds discipline. Pain builds inner power. And without it, a man stays a boy no matter how old he gets. Because boys want comfort. Boys chase distraction. Boys think life owes them ease. But men, real men, they know the world respects those who have walked through suffering and kept their head high. So when pain shows up in your life, instead of asking why it's happening to you, start asking what it's trying to build in you. Ask what version of yourself this moment is forcing you to become. Ask whether this is the moment you finally stop breaking and start hardening. Because every painful moment contains two paths: the path where you crumble and complain, and the path where you step forward with clenched teeth and a steady heart. The weight on your shoulders is not there to crush you. It is there to shape you. Every repetition of pain is another strike of the hammer shaping your character. Every setback is another cut that defines your edges. Every disappointment is another layer that makes you sharper, harder, and more capable of carrying the life you say you want. Every man wants strength. Every man wants respect. Every man wants to walk into a room and know he cannot be shaken by anything or anyone. But strength is not free. Strength is not inherited. Strength isn't something you buy, download, pretend to have, or talk your way into. Strength is earned. And the price, the only price, is pain. Pain is the currency every strong man has paid with and every weak man avoids until he becomes nothing but a shadow of who he could have been. When you see a disciplined man, a successful man, a man who stands firm in chaos, you are not looking at someone lucky. You are looking at someone who has been broken and rebuilt so many times he no longer fears breaking. You're looking at someone who has lost, failed, blood suffered, cried behind closed doors, and still woke up the next day to do what needed to be done. Strength is not built in comfort. It is built in the moments you want to quit but don't. It is built in the nights you feel alone but act like a warrior anyway. It's built every time life punches you and you choose to stand back up. Pain is the cost, and most men are broke. Not financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are broke because they refuse to pay what real strength demands. They want the results without the suffering, the reward without the sacrifice, the respect without the journey that earns it. But the world works on the oldest law. There is, you get what you pay for. And if you don't pay with pain, you receive nothing. Not discipline, not resilience, not courage, not confidence. Nothing. A man who avoids pain becomes dependent on comfort. He becomes fragile. He becomes someone who panics when things go wrong because his identity is built on softness. He's used to being shielded, protected, distracted. He spends his life chasing escapes, entertainment, addiction, cheap validation, anything that keeps him from facing the reality that he has never truly tested himself. And because he has never faced himself, he has no strength. He only has hope that things will get better somehow without him doing anything real to change. But the man who embraces pain operates differently. He understands that every difficult thing he does is adding to his internal wealth. Every challenge is depositing something into his soul. Every sacrifice increases his value. Pain becomes his investment and strength becomes his return. And unlike temporary comfort, strength is something a man carries forever. When a man pays with pain, he becomes someone who can endure more than the next person. He becomes someone who can outlast storms, setbacks, betrayals, losses, heartbreaks, failures, because he has already trained himself in the fire. He becomes a man others look to when things fall apart, because inside he has a foundation built on struggle, not on comfort. He knows the taste of hardship too well to be intimidated by it, and something remarkable happens when a man stops running from pain and starts using it. Pain becomes fuel. The same pressure that breaks weak men becomes the engine that drives strong men. Pain sharpens their instincts. Pain deepens their focus. Pain forces them to evolve into someone more capable than they ever imagined. Pain becomes a teacher that never lies. Pain teaches you what you're made of. Pain reveals how badly you want the life you claim to desire. Pain exposes your limits so you can push past them. You cannot build strength without paying in pain. Every rep in the gym is pain. Every hour spent learning instead of relaxing is pain. Every sacrifice, every discipline, every lonely night, every uncomfortable choice is pain. But that pain compounds. That pain multiplies. That pain transforms, and one day you wake up and realize you're no longer the man who was scared of difficulty. You're no longer the man who avoided challenges. You're no longer the man who broke under small pressure. You've risen beyond the version of yourself that once held you back. Pain is the currency. Strength is the reward. And every man chooses whether he will stay broke or invest in who he could become. Every man feels pain, but not every man knows what to do with it. Some men collapse under it. Some drown in it. Some use it as an excuse to become weaker, slower, lazier, more defeated than they already are. And then there are the rare few, the men who take the same pain and convert it into discipline. The men who decide that if pain is part of life, then they will not waste it. They will carry it. They will shape it. They will weaponize it. They will use it to carve themselves into someone unstoppable. Discipline is not a skill you are born with. Discipline is something forged out of discomfort. You cannot be disciplined while living an easy life. You cannot be disciplined while avoiding the things you fear. Discipline comes from facing pain and telling it that it does not control you. Discipline is the decision to act correctly even when everything inside you is screaming to take the easier path. And pain is the pressure that builds that discipline. Without pressure, metal stays soft. Without challenge, a man stays weak. When you wake up tired, discipline is what forces you to move. When doubts flood your mind, discipline is what silences them. When you feel emotionally drained, discipline is what keeps you aligned with your mission. The world teaches men that comfort is the goal, that life should feel smooth, enjoyable, relaxing. But comfort is the enemy of discipline. Comfort kills ambition. Comfort makes a man forget he has a purpose. Comfort slowly eats away at the edges of your spirit until you no longer recognize the man you were meant to be. But when a man chooses discipline over comfort, everything changes. Pain no longer feels like punishment. It feels like direction. It gives you signals. It tells you where you need to grow. It shows you where you are lacking. Instead of running away from what hurts, a disciplined man studies it, understands it, and then pushes straight through it. Discipline transforms pain from something that weakens you into something that strengthens you. It becomes resistance training for your mind. Think of the men you admire, the warriors, the leaders, the champions, the builders. Every single one of them has lived a life filled with difficult choices. They didn't wake up motivated every morning. They didn't glide through life on talent alone. They trained themselves. They forced themselves. They created a routine when their emotions didn't want one. They built habits that lined up with their goals, not their feelings. They understood that if you wait to feel ready, you will never begin. Discipline starts where motivation dies, and the truth is, pain gives discipline its meaning. If waking up early was easy, everyone would do it. If sacrificing distractions was comfortable, everyone would do it. If facing your weaknesses felt pleasant, everyone would do it. The reason discipline has value is because it demands a price, and that price is discomfort. When you choose discipline, you choose to pay the price willingly. You choose to say, I will not be controlled by impulse. I will not be controlled by emotions. I will not be controlled by weakness. That choice is what separates the average man from the exceptional man. A disciplined man carries his pain with purpose. He doesn't complain about it. He doesn't broadcast it. He doesn't need sympathy from anyone. He simply uses that pain as fuel to continue doing what must be done. He channels it into his work, his training, his decisions, his growth. Pain becomes a reminder that he is alive, capable, and evolving. Pain becomes proof that he is in motion, that he is fighting, that he is earning the life he wants. Most men will never experience this transformation because they are too busy trying to avoid anything that makes them uncomfortable. They want an easy road. They want instant results. They want strength without sacrifice, mastery without repetition, success without discipline. And that is why they stay stuck. That is why their lives never change. They ignore the one truth that could set them free. Discipline is the tool that turns pain into progress. When you understand that, you stop looking at pain as something unfair. You start seeing it as something necessary. You begin to realize that every difficult moment in your life is an invitation to become more disciplined, more focused, more resilient, more dangerous, more effective. You begin to see that discipline is not about punishing yourself. It is about preparing yourself. It is about building a version of you who can withstand life's storms without collapsing. Pain is a crossroads every man eventually reaches. And in that moment, he has only two options. He can let the pain destroy him, or he can use it to transform himself into someone stronger than he ever imagined. Most men take the first path, not because they are weak by nature, but because no one ever taught them that pain can be a tool. They grow up believing that when life hurts, the correct reaction is collapse, retreat, or avoidance. They never learn how to hold their pain without letting it poison them. They never learn how to turn that pain into something productive, something powerful, something that lifts them rather than breaks them. The truth is, life will hurt you whether you are strong or weak. Pain is not optional. What is optional is how you respond to it. Some men fall into destructive habits the moment discomfort arrives. They numb themselves with distractions, addictions, temporary reliefs that eventually create long-term consequences. They allow stress to consume them until they lash out at the world. They blame everyone except themselves. They turn pain into anger, anger into chaos, chaos into failure. And through it all, they tell themselves they had no choice. They convince themselves that suffering automatically means destruction. But destruction is never automatic. It is simply the default path of the undisciplined. When a man does not understand his own potential, pain becomes something that frightens him into paralysis. But when a man knows who he can become, pain becomes the spark that ignites him. It becomes the pressure that activates his potential. It becomes the reminder that he is still alive, still capable, still evolving. Pain becomes energy. Pain becomes clarity. Pain becomes power. Turning pain into power means refusing to let your suffering go to waste. If you are going to struggle, then turn that struggle into something valuable. If you are going to be heartbroken, let that heartbreak sharpen your focus. If you are going to be stressed, let that stress refine your discipline. If you are going to feel lost, let that confusion push you into action. Too many men waste their pain by using it to justify giving up. They forget that every powerful man they look up to once felt the same pain, but used it differently. Think about the strongest men in history. None of them came from peaceful, easy lives. They came from hardship, conflict, uncertainty, rejection, disappointment. Their strength wasn't inherited. It was forged. It was built through moments when most people would have collapsed. They chose to rise. They chose the path of building instead of breaking. They chose the path of transformation instead of self-pity. They chose to see pain not as punishment, but as preparation. That choice changed everything. A man who learns how to convert pain into purpose becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Nothing can stop him because nothing can defeat him internally. Challenges become fuel. Setbacks become lessons. Attacks become motivation. He begins to develop a resilience that feels almost unnatural to those around him. People start to wonder why he never seems to fold, why he never loses direction, why he keeps rising despite the storms. They don't understand that it's not because he avoided suffering. It's because he mastered it. Turning pain into power is not about pretending you don't feel hurt. It is about refusing to let that hurt dictate your actions. It is about being emotionally aware, but not emotionally enslaved. It is about taking that internal fire and directing it instead of letting it burn you from the inside. It is about reminding yourself that your pain has meaning, and that meaning is to shape you into the man you are meant to be. Pain becomes power when you give it a job. When you tell it, instead of breaking me, you will build me. When you take your anger and channel it into discipline. When you take your heartbreak and channel it into focus. When you take your fear and channel it into preparation. When you take your stress and channel it into self-mastery. Every emotion becomes a tool in your hands instead of a weapon against you. Most men never reach this level because they allow their pain to make them smaller. But the men who rise, the men who lead, the men who achieve greatness, these are the men who take the same pain and use it to become larger. They expand when life compresses them. They strengthen when life tests them. They use every wound as evidence that they are still moving, still progressing, still fighting for the life they want. A man's life is shaped by what he chooses to honor. Some men honor distraction. Some honor comfort. Some honor their excuses. And then there are the rare few who honor their pain, their purpose, and their potential. These are the men who refuse to drift through life without intention. These are the men who decide that every moment, whether it feels good or bad, must contribute to the future they are building. They do not waste what they feel. They do not waste what they experience. They understand that life is not something happening to them. It is something being forged by them. And every choice either strengthens that forge or weakens it. Building a life that honors your pain means accepting that nothing you have suffered was meaningless. It means understanding that the difficult nights, the lonely moments, the disappointments and the betrayals were not roadblocks, they were instructions. They were shaping you, carving out the weaknesses, forcing you to confront yourself. Too many men try to outrun their pain, pretending it never happened or pretending it didn't affect them. But running from pain only gives it power. The men who rise are the ones who face their pain head on, acknowledge it, learn from it, and then use it as a weapon of insight. When you honor your pain, you turn it into the foundation of your strength instead of the anchor of your regret. But pain alone is not enough. A man must honor his purpose. That inner pull, that quiet voice, that deep intuition telling him he was built for more. Purpose is not loud. It does not scream. It whispers. It nudges. It appears in the moments when you're honest with yourself. It shows up when you're tired of mediocrity. It grows stronger when you start rejecting the life you know you were never meant to settle for. Purpose is the direction. Pain is the energy. Potential is the destination. When you align all three, you stop living like a passenger and start living like the driver of your own destiny. Honoring your purpose means choosing the harder path because the harder path is aligned with who you want to become. It means doing the things that your future self will respect, even when your current self resists. It means waking up with intention instead of drifting into another forgettable day. It means looking at your life and asking, am I living as the man I know I could be, or am I living as the man I've accepted by default? And if the answer is the second, then purpose demands you change. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now then comes honoring your potential, the part most men never reach. Potential is not something you unlock. It is something you rise into. It is a constant challenge, a constant invitation to stretch beyond the limits you thought defined you. No one truly knows their potential until they push themselves into discomfort long enough to see what remains after fear fades. Most people stop before the breakthrough. They believe their current level is their ceiling. But a man who honors his potential understands that there are no ceilings, only layers waiting to be peeled back through discipline, repetition, and relentless focus. Building a life that honors your pain, purpose, and potential means living with a mindset that refuses to stay small. You begin to view challenges as opportunities to test yourself. You begin to see discipline not as punishment, but as the currency required to purchase the future you want. You begin to treat your time as something sacred, not something to waste. You begin to carry yourself with the seriousness of someone who understands that his life has meaning far beyond the present moment. And as you start living this way, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing validation. You stop begging for approval. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your mission. You no longer crumble under pressure because pressure becomes familiar. You no longer panic when life gets hard because difficulty becomes expected. You no longer fear the unknown because the unknown becomes the arena where your strength is tested and your character is revealed. A man who builds his life with this level of intention becomes unshakable, not because he has avoided pain, but because he has integrated it, not because he has found an easy purpose, but because he has committed to the true one, not because he has reached his potential, but because he wakes up every day determined to get closer in the end. Everything you've heard comes down to one truth: a man is defined by how he transforms his pain, how he protects his purpose, and how he pursues his potential. Life is not testing you to destroy you. It's testing you to see if you are worthy of the strength you've been asking for. Every setback you faced, every silent battle you fought, every moment you felt alone or broken or misunderstood, those were not failures, those were assignments. They were the challenges designed to prepare you for the man you keep seeing in your mind, but haven't yet become in reality. You don't rise by accident. You don't become powerful through comfort. You don't build discipline by waiting until you feel ready. You rise because you choose to rise. You become powerful because you refuse to stay weak. You build discipline because you act while every part of you wants to quit. That is the separation. That is the difference between the men who dream and the men who execute. Pain is not the enemy. Doubt is not the enemy. Fear is not the enemy. The only enemy is the version of you that refuses to evolve. And if there is anything you take with you from this speech, let it be this: your life will not change when the world becomes easier. Your life will change when you become stronger. The pressure you feel today is molding you. The difficulties you face are shaping you. The discomfort you endure is upgrading you. Everything you are going through right now has a purpose, and that purpose is the creation of a man who cannot be shaken by excuses, emotion, or circumstance. So you stand up, you take responsibility, you stop waiting for the right moment, and you start creating it. You stop running from battles and you start walking into them like a man who understands that victory belongs to those who are willing to suffer for greatness. You stop living for validation and you start living for your mission. Because once you choose to honor your pain, your purpose, and your potential, you stop existing and you start becoming. This is the moment. This is the turning point. This is where you decide whether you will continue being the man life has pushed around or whether you will become the man who pushes back. Your future is watching. Your purpose is waiting. Your potential is calling. Now it's on you to step into it.